Okay, number 1 on this page. So I gave you a sine trig value, and sine is negative. So can you think about some Asticus stuff? Sine, the trig value for sine is negative. So where could I be right now if sine is negative? I could be in the bottom, right? Sine is negative in the bottom ones. But the angle is not in quadrant 4, so not there. So what's the conclusion? We're in quadrant 3. So I'm going to draw a picture down here. I'm going to do some work. Okay, now I was told that the sine of this angle A is negative 3/5. So where would you put the negative 3 and where would you put the 5 on the triangle? You got the X, the Y, and the R. What's going on? Where would you put the negative 3? The Y. And 5 is the R. Can you get me the third side with Pythagorean theorem? Some of you might have this one memorized. I think we see it sometimes. A 4. In that location, would that be a plus or a minus 4? Minus. So what is the cos ratio for A? Negative 4 over 5. Okay, I'm going to stop there. I don't need the tan ratio, so that's all I want to go forward. All that was just some background work. Okay, so now we're going to go, what is the sine of the double angle? Okay, so find me a formula that says the sine of a doubled angle. This one right here. 2 sine A cos A. Okay, sine A can be replaced with what? Negative 3/5, yeah. Right there, we have it all written down. Cos A can be replaced with negative 4/5. And just to help us out, I suggest writing the number 2 as a 2 over 1, just to line up everything with a fraction. Okay, so the whole fraction comes out to be what times what times what? What does that top number come out to be? Positive or negative top? Positive. What do you got? 24. Positive 24 over, what's the bottom number? 1 times 5 times 5 is 25. That's the trig value for the sine of the double angle. Okay, cos 2A. So now I'm going to look on my sheet. Okay, I actually have 3 choices. Okay, it doesn't matter. You can pick any of them. I personally like to use this top one. Okay, so I'm going to pick that one. So cos squared A minus sine squared A. So I picked the first one. You can pick the other ones if you want, and it will all work out. Okay, cos A, so negative 4/5 brackets, but I'd have to square it. Minus, replace the sine A, but don't forget we'll have to square that. Okay, so when you square this, these will turn positive, right? Does that make sense to you? Everything will turn positive no matter what you square. It's positive. So 16 over 25. Subtract, then this would turn to a positive 9. So your trig value is 7/25. Okay, so when we get to the tan of 2a, this is the formula, but I also have another thing that we're going to use. So I'm going to write this right on my formula sheet. Tan is always our y divided by our x. So in replacing the y, that's the sine value divided by the cos value. And if I'm doing it of the double angle, then I'm doing this with the double angle. So that's actually what I'm going to use. And the reason I'm going to use it is because I already have those numbers ready to go. Okay, otherwise I would have had to use that formula and we would have had to get our trig ratio for tan. But okay, so let's replace. So sine 2a, that was our first one, so 24/25 divided by 7/25. What happens when we divide with two fractions? Do you want to flip multiply? Does that make sense? So the first fraction times and flip the second one. And then what will happen? There will be a cancel. And that's our final answer. Okay? Okay, looking at the next question. I think I'm just going to do the first part of it. Okay, so I gave you the trig value for cos of 48 degrees. I would like you to get me the cos for 96 degrees. What's the relationship between a 48-degree angle and a 96-degree angle? Anybody know what connects those numbers? 96 is what in compared to 48? Double. So I'm going to be doing, what's the cos of the double angle? Because 96 is double the 48 angle. Okay, cos of a double angle. This is the one where there's three options, but I have to pick a certain one. I don't get a choice. Which one of these three do I have to pick because of the info the question gave me? The third one is the right one because I know what's the cos of A, so I have to use that. I can't use this or this because do you know the sine of A? No. So we're going to pick 2 cos squared of the angle minus 1. So we're picking that formula because of what we knew in the question. So then that's what I'm doing. Because the cos of the angle was given. So that can be on your calculator. Okay, the next page. How many of these do I have? Okay, 2 more questions. Okay, this is, so that was the double angle stuff. Now this is adding 2 angles that have nothing to do with the unit circle. Okay, so cos of this angle A is negative. So where could the angle A be located if cos is negative? On the left. Angle B has a positive tan, so where could I put angle B? Now, both of these angles are in the same quadrant. So which quadrant should I end up picking altogether? For them to be in the same, they're both in 3. Okay, so this is what I know about A and B. They're both in quadrant 3. So we were given the cos ratio for A, so -7/25. So that means, where do I put those numbers on my triangle? So this should be familiar from last unit. That's your X and your R. Are you okay if I do the Pythagorean theorem here? And I get 24. And then you should think, what is it going to be? Plus or minus 24? Minus. Okay, now I'm going to finish the sine ratio. -24/25. Okay, this is all old stuff, right? This was all last unit. Okay, B. Tan is y/x. So I need a 15 on the y and an 8 on the x. Well, that doesn't make sense. Why doesn't this make sense? They should both be negative, right? Obviously, I canceled the negatives. Okay, I feel like this is going to be 17 if anybody's done it. 17 is the R. So sine would be y divided by R, and cos is x divided by R. Okay, now this is the actual question. We haven't even got to the question yet. That was all just work. Can you figure out what the trig value is for cos of A minus B? So I'm going to my formula sheet, and I found a formula for the cos of A minus B for my formula sheet, and I'm just copying it down. So grab that from your formula sheet, cos of A minus B. Everyone's good? Found that spot? Okay, give me 4 brackets, and then we're already done the work. Now we just plug in our stuff. Okay, can you replace the fractions where they need to go? Okay, so 25 times 17 is 425. What does this come out to be on the top there? We got a -7 times a -8. So that should be 56. Okay, the rest is math. So there's my final answer. Can you imagine yourself adding up an angle from this quadrant and then another angle from that quadrant? Where would it probably land? So pretend you had like a 213 degree angle plus a 250 degree angle or something. Where would it land? Which quadrant? Probably in quadrant 1, right? So does this cosine value make sense? It needs to be positive, right? Okay, so I had one more of these questions. What do you think? Do you want me to do another one? There's just a couple variations, but not many. Okay, we got to get your quadrants. So give me, where would you put A? Where would you put B? It tells me you can't be in quadrant 1. So that's out for both of them. You're not allowed to be in 1. Instead of thinking along the lines of cosecant, what are you probably thinking instead? Sine is positive, so then I must be in quadrant 2. So A is in quadrant 2. B, where is tan positive? Can't be in 1. So that angle happens to be in quadrant 3. If you were to add those together, where do you think you would actually be in? Which quadrant do you think the final angle would be in? Quadrant 4?
Yeah.
Okay. So what letters is cosecant? 5 would be the R, right? R over, what's your cosecant? R over Y. So the Y is 4. And if you're good, I gave you Pythagorean theorem. That's a 3. Is it a plus or minus 3 on location? Negative. So using your triangle XYRs, get me your 2 ratios. Okay, so angle B, we were told the tan, so that's a Y side and that's an X side, a Y side and an X side. That does not make sense. They both were negative, and that's why they turned positive. And if you're okay, I did Pythagorean theorem, and it came out to be 13. So give me your 2 ratios. Okay, I asked you to get me, here's the actual question. What's the cos of A plus B? So go copy something from your formula sheet. Grab your formula sheet, find that formula. Okay, that's good, the cos formula. Now, give yourself room to fill in the 4 numbers and then grab them because we've already done the work. Okay, I like to do the bottom first because they both have a 5 times 13 on the bottom. So I'm actually going to put it all as one fraction. It's got a 65 on the bottom. So the first would turn out to be 15, right? And then subtract 4 times negative 12 would be a negative 48, right? And then the math on that turns into adding. Okay, now I asked you, part 2, find the sine of a plus b. So grab your formula sheet. Copy down the formula that you find for sine of a plus b. Okay, I always start with these 4 open brackets, and then I just say, well, what do I have to fill into each spot? Matching, 16 over 65, all said and done. Okay, the very last step is to tell me the actual coordinate, the point. What is the point? So a coordinate is always written with an x value, comma, a y value. Now, when we connect these ideas to trig, x values come from the cos trig value, right? And how do you get a y value when you look at trig? You look at the sine trig value. So this would be the coordinate and that's the point, the coordinate of the actual point. Remember that these are fractional because your numbers can't ever go higher than 1, right? So that's why they're fraction numbers. Okay, that's it. But just quickly, when I look at your homework, which starts on page 4, I gave you nice ones that's square rooted. When you work here, you might not get a nice one that's square roots. You need to leave the square root value, right? So just be careful with your math on your square root values. Do you want to just do this one together? The first one? And then it's like, got more of your homework done? Sure. Okay, this is nice. They told us which quadrant it's in, so we don't even have to do that. Angle A is in quadrant 2. So angle A is in quadrant 2. They told me that the sine of this angle is 5 over 13.
Is that not quadrant 1?
Wow. That's like, it's Monday. Monday's full of errors. That's what I've come to a conclusion. Okay. You guys didn't draw yours there, right? You already knew that I was wrong? That's just, I'm just testing to see if you're copying me or thinking about it. 5 over 13. So, does anybody have this triangle memorized? Because it's a common one. 12 minus 12 with location. So the cos of A is that ratio. Okay, all this is just work. Let's do what we know about B. So angle B is in quadrant 4. Hopefully I draw that in the correct spot. Angle B is in quadrant 4. We were told the cos of B is 2/5. So there's a 2 and a 5 on the triangle. Okay, this is not a nice square root, right? What is that the square root of? 21? The square root of 21 is left. Plus or minus? Minus. So the sine of B equals negative root 21 over 5. Okay, that's all the work. Now it's just formulas plug in. Okay, so grab your formula sheet, figure out what you want to use. Okay, so your formula should say cos, cos, minus, sine, sine, like one of those. Give yourself 4 brackets, fill in. Okay, everyone's good with the numbers plugged in? And both have a bottom of 65, so I'm going to group them together because they both have common denominators, so they can get put together. Okay, negative 12 times 2 is negative 24. Subtracting a negative number, I'm just going to write that this will add, because there was a subtract a negative. And this cannot go together, so it's called 5 root 21. Done. Nothing else you can do. You can't add that together with the 24 part, and you're done. Okay? So that's what the roots look like in the math, right? Okay, sine 2a. Now you need to find a formula, and it's on the bottom there. So find a formula. Okay, I put it as a 2 over 1 just to help my fraction math, and then plug in. Okay, and then just finish the math part of it.